Scott on an email. Saw Kidulthood earlier this week. I didn't have particularly high hopes for it, but I was very impressed. Some smart direction, strong believable performances and a cracking pace. The film knew its own limitations and in no way glorifies the sometimes unpleasant events it portrays. My only criticism would be that the moral moments of the film didn't quite ring true. They were the only parts that felt contrived, but on reflection were probably needed to give the film a sense of redemption. A real surprise and one of the best British films I've seen for a while. I'm keen to hear what Mark made out of it.
You want to...
Cue Mark.
Well, it's very interesting. You know, people are always torn between this, are you portraying a world or are you glorifying it? And that was, I mean, there was a thing on Newsnight last night when they had, somebody was saying, actually, it's a very accurate portrayal of this world. Incidentally, I'm, you know, white and 42 and live in Southampton, so I have no idea what that world is like. And then somebody else saying, yes, but the problem is it doesn't comment on it in the way that, for example, and they cited Scum. Now, of course, if you remember what happened when Scum originally came out, it was actually kind of banned, and everyone said this is terrible, it's glorifying violence. There is a history of this. Any film which addresses, you know, teenage delinquency, there is automatically an outcry of some people saying it is glorifying this violence. In the case of Kidulthood, the interesting comparison, if you compare it to like Larry Clarke's Kids, which I really don't like, which I think is a leery and sensationalist piece of work, the critics fell all over themselves to congratulate in Cannes, and I thought it was a really, you know, malignant piece of work, and I don't trust it at all. I think Kidulthood has none of the leeriness that it has. I think it does seem to be authentic. As I said, from my perspective, I can't tell you whether that world is real. It looked real to me. The performances are very strong. If I have a criticism at all, actually it slightly reflects what was said in that email, that the points that it seems least certain is the points in which it has to do some narrative things, like an awful lot happens in the 24 hours. It has to have a beginning and an end, and it does, to some extent, therefore, follow melodramatic conventions. But the times at which it's most convincing is when the kids are loitering and hanging and doing their stuff. It's very well directed, and it doesn't have, as I said, that exploitation edge that Kids does. It's a very sparky, very, very enthusiastic, and I have to say, apparently honest British movie. It's very well played, very well written, and my reservations about it are, if anything, I could almost do with less of the melodrama and more of the... See, whenever anyone tries to impose morality on something, whenever anyone sort of does the speech, the author's message speech, that's when I start to worry about things. But as I said, specifically in relation to this charge that, well, it doesn't have the context of Scum. When Scum came out, nobody thought it had the context of Scum. Everyone said, well, it's not like when Rebel Without a Cause came out, because that had context. When Rebel Without a Cause came out, it was banned. You know, this is how it works.
What do you make of those comments, Noel? Specifically, these moral points which the emailer Scott mentioned. Is that addressed at all by the fact that the bullies, you know, they're empty characters? I mean, they're losers, and that's clear.
Yeah, you know, like was just said, you know, I did want to, you know, make the point that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, and these young people it can't be positive for them. You know, if you live a negative life and you do these bad things and you're involved with bad people, bad things are going to happen. There was a screening last night and someone said to me that, you know, I don't want to give away the ending, but they said I wish the tragic thing hadn't happened at the end. And I said, well, I didn't want the young boy to ride off on a motorbike into the sunset with butterflies, because then it's saying basically that he could do all these bad things and he could get away with it. And I don't think that's the reality of life. I think, you know, if you're going to do these bad things, then you have to show that there can be tragic circumstances, and the kids have to watch this film and not want to end up like any of the young people in it. So it is kind of over the top with the morals that all the bullies and people end up as losers, but you have to understand that, you know, these are the consequences of things that can happen.
Is it based on real people?
Yeah. Specifically from my life, like, I'm not going to bring anyone else into it, but, you know, when I was young, I grew up one parent, council estate, Ladbroke Grove, 5 minutes from the Blue Door in Notting Hill, you know, and a lot of the things in the film are things that I knew about and that I grew with. So when people say, I mean, there's a clown in the Times who said, oh, it's pandering to middle-class voyeurism, you know, so he's basically saying that middle-class people can't watch anything that's not about themselves. And, you know, which is nonsense, you know, because then you don't want to watch the news about disadvantaged people. So I'm saying, you know, people say it's not real. I'm saying it is real because I've come from there, you know. And the very fact that what people should be celebrating is the film itself, and the very fact that half the kids we used weren't actors, and these are children that came from this environment and made conscious choices to go to auditions to change their life, and then have now become actors and have agents and stuff like that, you know. So they should be celebrating that fact.
And one of the actors is Ray Winston's daughter, isn't she?
Yeah,
and
Jamie Winston.
Who's a very, very strong performance.
Brilliant.
Has he got good distribution? I mean, is this going to be something UK-wide?
Yeah, it's nationwide. It's nationwide.
Because often when we talk about new movies that are coming, particularly British films, we have a very interesting conversation. Everyone's interested in the film, but you can only see it in 3 cinemas.
Yeah, no, it's nationwide.
No, Kidulthood will be seen, partly because it's broken into the news. I mean, regardless of whether or not people are positive or negative about it in those kind of news situations, the fact that it's broken into the news pages almost guarantees its circulation. In a way, that's kind of depressing, because for me, that's what happened with Kids. And I thought a bunch of people ended up seeing Kids, which really didn't deserve to be seen. But in the case of Kidulthood, I think it will work in its favour.
Noel, good to see you again. Thanks so much for coming in. And then we see you again in Doctor Who, presumably,
Indeed.
in the next series.
Back on in a few weeks' time, I think.
And is Billy still in?
Billy's there, I'm there, David's there, and it's going to be fantastic, if you'll excuse the pun.
Okay, and how long is Billy going to be in it, do you know?
You'll have to ask her.
I can't, she's not here.
Well, you'll have to phone her and ask her. I can't talk for her, can I?
Okay, but as far as you know?
I don't know. I know about what I do.
Just this email, just before you go, as it is about your film.
Okay.
And it's back onto something you can talk about,
okay,
happily. Peter in London, the trouble with films like Kidult is that they don't, in quotes, reach the kids themselves, as your guest says. They're watched by a small audience of middle-class Islingtonites. The kids in working-class estates will go out and they'll watch the Bruce Willis movie. That's the real problem. How will he deal with that, says Peter. Is there an essence of truth about that?
No, Peter. I think this time, I mean, obviously we'll see, but I think this time, Peter, with all due respect, and that's a very interesting point, and I do agree with it usually, but this time you're wrong. What the young people are saying, a lot of the young people are saying, is that this film, has hit the nail on the head. And even if they're not from those specific areas, the issues that it touches upon are a nation, if not worldwide.
And is that because of the soundtrack, amongst other things, the fact that you've got, apparently, the coolest soundtrack going with the music which people will immediately identify with? Well, your target audience will, anyway. Yes. And the middle-class Islingtonites will go, blimey, this is a bit thumpy-thumpy.
Well, what's all this bass about? I don't quite understand. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Whatever happened to Grandmaster Flash, they'll be saying.